Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everyone joining the second webinar of the series Connecting to Reimagine Money and COVID-19. I am Nicoletta Zappatini. I am a banker at StormHarbour Securities in London and a member of the GFLEC Advisory Council. I'm very pleased to moderate today's webinar, which offers a sneak peek into the findings of a new report by GFLEC and the TIAA Institute, which will be released later this week. There will be now an initial discussion with the panelists. I prepare some questions, as we want you to keep engaged and interact with us. Please send your questions through the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and I will address them to the panelists after an initial round of questions. So let's start. Anna, you are one of the authors of the report, Financial Literacy and Wellness Among U.S. Women, Insights on Underrepresented Minority Women. What are some of the key findings of the new report by the TIAA Institute and GFLEC? Can you let us know?
Yes, thank you very much, Nicoletta. First of all, I have to say I'm so excited to be able to provide some sneak peek at the finding of the report, which will be made available this week. But before I do so, let me say how useful it has been to collect data at a yearly frequency about personal finance knowledge and personal finance management. I have learned enormously from this project, and I want to thank the TIAA Institute for supporting this initiative. So starting from 2017, each January, we have collected data on personal finance and personal finance management on a representative sample of the US population. And each year, we have oversampled a specific group. And this group this year has been women. So I remind you that the data was collected in January before the pandemic and when the economy was doing well. And I want to describe the finding now, just a summary of the major findings. And I would like to mention 5 findings that can be important to consider together today. The first finding, and we are looking at a sample of US women, is that the financial literacy of women is simply too low to imagine that women can make savvy financial decisions. Certainly in a time like this one, which is a timing of crisis, of a timing where markets are so volatile and it's so much more difficult to make financial decisions. Women are able to answer only half of the questions that are asked in our survey, and we have as many as 28 questions. So answering half of the question is not a passing grade. The second finding is even more worrisome, and which is that the topics that women know the least are the most important considering these current times. The topics that where financial knowledge is lacking the most is risk and risk management, is in the area of insuring, and is in the area of investing. And this is, of course, particularly important because these decisions are particularly important at this time. The third findings is related to the fact that when we look at women, this is not a homogeneous group. There are very large differences among women. And in the report, we highlight in particular big differences between, for example, white women and African American and Hispanic women, where when we look at those groups, financial literacy is even lower. And we see a lot of challenges when we look at the financial behavior of African Americans and Hispanic women. Then when I look at behavior, we find, I think, a very important result, which I summarize as saying financial literacy matters, meaning financial literacy is linked to a variety of behavior that are linked to financial well-being, For example, managing debt, for example, being financially resilient, being able to save and plan for the future, being able to manage debt and make payment on time. And the fifth finding is related to a new questions that we have asked this year, which is how many hours women spend in dealing with personal finance issues and problems related to personal finance issues. And what we found is striking. Women with low financial literacy spend as many as 16 hours a week dealing with personal finance issues. And I would like to end with that and with this statement. Financial literacy truly matters. I think that's why it's so important to highlight these findings, but also to discuss today, what can we do so that women going forward are more financially literate and more financially resilient, more financially secure.
Thank you, Anna. This is a very useful insight. I will now move to Marty as we inevitably move forward from the pandemic. Marty, what should be points of focus and initiatives to improve financial well-being among and across women?
First of all, thank you everyone for hosting this today. I'm pleased to be here. I thought I'd share a little bit about my background. I have been in financial services for over 30 years. And this topic about women and investing has been there almost the entire time. I am a mother of 3 millennials, and I have 2 daughters and a son. So this has had a personal level of importance for me as well. You know, raising 2 daughters, I've always told them one thing: you have to stand on your own 2 feet. And it's true of my son as well. Gone are the days that you can depend on your company to provide for your retirement. And gone are the days that you can depend on someone else to provide for your retirement, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And to Anna's point earlier about the pandemic, there are lots of things that occur during a financial experience that you just have not planned for. So as we talked about the report, clearly the economic consequences of the pandemic have greatly stressed the personal finances of many Americans, in particular women. And unfortunately, too many women were not well prepared prior to COVID-19. And this has had a greater blow for these individual households than prior. And I think a key element is in terms of helping individuals be better equipped to handle these financial events is really what Anna mentioned about financial literacy. And financial literacy is not something that you just snap your fingers and you've got it. It is a lifetime journey. And it is something that is a lot of steps along the way, and it requires discipline to do that. So improving financial literacy is first and foremost, but we have to be a little bit nuanced in our thinking about financial literacy. It is, financial literacy has come out as particularly low for women, and in particular with risk and uncertainty. And as most of you are aware, with finances, there's a lot of risk. There are a lot of things that are unknown. What are interest rates going to do? What's the market's going to do? Have I saved enough? When am I going to retire? And so you have to be able to deal with risks when you're making sound investment decisions. So clearly, financial literacy is a key part. The content of financial literacy is a key part. How do I deliver those messages? And increasingly, I think, how do you gain more of a community in understanding financial literacy, whether it's face-to-face or even through digital, how you start to form these communities to share the experiences. So again, literacy matters, and risk and uncertainty is very important to focus on.
Thank you, Marty. Let's move now to Flore-Anne to get an international insight. So we know that the OECD has done several surveys around the world regarding financial literacy. Are the results similar to this report? What can you tell us?
Thank you very much, Nicoletta, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Let me congratulate first GFLEC and TIAA for the report. At the OECD, we do believe that any policies and practice should start with evidence. So it's really great to see this data coming out. And of course, we're looking forward to the report to be published soon. On the evidence that Anna just mentioned, I have to say that at the OECD, of course, we've been developing a lot of evidence on financial literacy. Since 2008, we started collecting some data. And I'd like to say that, of course, women are an heterogeneous group and there are differences among countries. So I will be speaking in terms of average, but it is very important, I think, for all of us women to also keep in mind this heterogeneity while we speak about us, in a sense here. So yes, the data for adults and our latest survey has been released this year show again that the financial knowledge, I would say, of women is lower than that of men. And typically it is the case in the area of risk. Women tend to be more risk adverse and also to understand risk a bit less, to understand investment a bit less, which is, of course, quite concerning in the world we live in. And in particular, our latest survey was also looking at financial resilience, and we also saw that the financial resilience of women, that is, say, how many weeks or months are they able to live without an income, is lower than that of men. So again, the data was collected before this crisis, so some concerns here. We are also looking, I would like to say, at girls and not only at women. We are interested in young generation and just looking at their financial knowledge, applied financial knowledge. And since 2012, we've been collecting data on financial literacy through the Program for International Student Assessment, also known as PISA. Here, we also observe some, what I would call gender differences rather than gender gaps. In the last iteration of this exercise, and the results were also released this year, actually, we saw a gender gap saying, well, basically saying that girls are performing less well in terms of financial literacy than boys. But importantly, what we see is that boys are generally top performers in financial literacy, whereas girls that are top performers are much fewer. So again, we would like our girls, to have the maximum skills in terms of financial literacy. It's still not there. On top of that, it looks like girls are understanding fewer financial terms, are quite often less financially included, and also less digitally savvy. So very important skills in today's world that they do not necessarily have. So I would say, as a woman, what is the issue here? Why are we concerned? And I'd like to say that our latest survey on women, actually adult women, show that actually women themselves are worried about finance. So we have an indicator of financial well-being, and we see that women are more worried, more dissatisfied with their financial situation than men. So the first concern is women are concerned. The second one is that, as was mentioned by Marty and Anna, we live in a very complicated situation where financial resilience is extremely important, and ability to manage one's resources is important now, will continue to be even more important as we will live in a very uncertain economic situation. And then I would say it's also because of the role of women in society. Of course, we shouldn't forget that most of the time women are still the child carer, the one that are transmitting the financial knowledge to the kids and the children, then the teenagers. So that's very important. And lastly, of course, we know that women have shorter life, shorter careers with quite often, unfortunately, lower level of income, and still they live longer than men. So typically there are more needs, I would say, for women to be financially equipped and understand this well. So as a woman, and as I see younger generation, sometimes I'm wondering, this younger generation, quite often girls are even more educated than boys. So how is it that we still observe this, gaps and differences, especially in financial knowledge? And here, I think it is because still for women, or still personal finance is really transmitted as a lot of figures, as it is a lot about numeracy, it is a lot about money. When actually the message, when we speak about financial literacy and personal finance, we speak about life choices. We speak about giving the opportunity to your children to invest in their education, getting perhaps a better house, a better car. So I think it is the message around financial literacy that should change in order to engage women more. And we will, I'm sure, speak about some solution there. But for me, personal finance and financial literacy is really about life choices.
Thank you, Flore-Anne. I would like to go back for a moment to Marty. In your earlier comments, you refer to several dimensions of financial resilience and challenge. Besides financial literacy, what is another dimension, Marty, that you would like to call out?
Yeah, I would just build on what Flore-Anne just said about the precarious state of financial status for many women, and they are finding it very difficult to make ends meet. And a lot of it has to do with how the information is presented. You know, we know from the survey that almost 60% of the women are at the lowest level of financial literacy. And so that is very challenging for them. And we also know that this combination of personal finances with low financial literacy, so I don't have the money, I don't have the resources, I don't really know what I'm doing, is really a problem. And that was before COVID-19. So often what happens, because people don't have the information to make smart decisions, they make poor decisions. And they can often dig themselves into a bigger hole of debt. That means it's harder for them to come out of that. So the information has to happen earlier on with people, and starting, and it's hard. It's like financial health, or it's like health, right? You take a lot of little steps along the way. It's a journey. It's not just something quickly. And so you have to start taking those steps right at the very beginning of your adult life, about thinking about what you're doing in terms of savings. Are you spending your paycheck every day fully, or can you put a little bit aside so that you have those resources for those unexpected needs that may come? And so there's no different for the healthcare, where you probably know of Fitbit, right? And Fitbit was popular because they had everyone doing 10,000 steps, right? And that brought people healthier. They got off the couch, they got physically fit. And it's those type of little things that can start to move entire populations to performing better behaviors.
Thank you, Marty. Flore-Anne, what are the potential solutions? You have a lot of experience. What have you seen that works? Can you give us some insights?
Thank you, Nicoletta. And I guess the question is very good, because we are all interested in how we can change. How can we make women more engaged on financial issues? And I'm very happy to share with you that first at the OECD, we just released a recommendation on financial literacy that has been approved by all OECD governments and Brazil. And that, of course, beyond recommending having a national strategy for financial literacy, and by the way, congratulations to the US for the new strategy, beyond looking at COVID issues and digitalization, we are also looking at different groups of the population and how to support them. And of course, we are looking and interested in women and gender issues. And here I would like to give you kind of 5 types of good practices. One example to illustrate that, and I would like to insist on one of these good practices that I believe is often overlooked and could be kind of a very good solution for women. So let me first get into my 5 good practices very quickly. First, I will echo what Marty just said. We need to start early. We need to start early for everyone, but we need to start early for our girls, because, you know, gender gaps actually appear very early in life. Financial habits appear very early in life. So it is very important to target our girls early as well, ideally in schools, but also I would say it starts also in the household, in the family. Second, there is no one size fits all, and we should also look at an holistic approach. Again, as I said, as I'm sure all of us would agree, we are not all the same as women. There are many different groups within women, and we are also different. So we should think of that when we deliver financial literacy, and it's very important not to think of women as necessarily an homogeneous group. And in the same way, taking an holistic approach is important, and by holistic, I mean we should reach out women in their lives. I think really we should think of financial literacy as part of their life and give them actually the opportunity to learn when they are about to make choices. My third one is make it concrete and operational. I think women will be more engaged if they immediately see the benefits of the personal finance, if they can see a change in their life soon after that. Fourth one is use role model and champion. And here, I'm not sure I'll be very popular with the panelists, but I'd like to say that no one really wants to learn from regulators or actually bankers. We are more looking at, role models, and I've seen a lot of programs that are really working well because women are learning from their peers and people that they trust. Not saying that regulators and bankers are not trustworthy, but really this link between women is really, really important. And my last point is about targeting individuals, yes, but also the community. And I'll come back on this. But I first would like to tell you of a very small example that I've witnessed. I've been to Peru for a conference on women actually and girls, and I've actually witnessed a program. And it was, the program 2 years after. It was a very simple program trying to help women in the Quechua community actually developing their small business and having access to a loan at the bank. And what was fantastic about this program is that it was first about, of course, knowledge of finance, but it was mostly about addressing their fears about, being credible at the bank and how to build their confidence. And when I met this woman, it was 2 years after the program, they had built their business. So we could say that the program was successful, but I found it extremely successful because you could see the pictures and the video of the woman before the program and 2 years later. And these women have changed even physically. Their role in the society has completely changed in their village, in their family, but also physically they were glowing, really glowing. So really showing, that financial knowledge, personal finance is really changing life. And this is the point I would like to leave you with now. It is important, of course, to target individuals with financial literacy. We are all living in a very individualistic society. At the same time, we are social animals. So we have our partners, our husband, our children, our peers, and changing one's habits because we have the financial knowledge is quite difficult. Try quitting smoking in a community of smokers. It is very difficult. So if we want to make financial literacy successful for girls and women, we really need to target them, but also target the community they live in. Try to get the man, the husband, the boys together at the program. Try to target the influencers, those that will make the change in the society easier. So I think a lot of programs have not necessarily been that successful because they really failed to engage the whole community. So I think for me, it is very, very important element. And last but not least, I see some really hope in some new trends in finance. And I want to speak just 2 words about sustainable finance, which I really think is finance with a collective purpose. I think that women particularly can play an important role in sustainable finance because they will see that by the investment, they can also have an impact in the society in terms of environmental choice, social choice, governance choice. So I want to leave you with that.
Very, very interesting. Anna, how are you going to use these findings?
I want to use them in 3 ways. First of all, as you know, like what we do at GFLEC is not only do research, but translate that research for policymakers, regulators, and practitioners and so on. And so I want to make sure that in addition to this report, we are going to write policy briefs, white papers, be able to communicate this message. And as Marty and Flore-Anne also mentioned, this is an important message for everybody. The second thing is I'm going to use it for my own teaching. I've been teaching personal finance since 2013 here at George Washington University. And I think I'm going to change the message and change what I say to my students, in particular to my female students. I want to motivate them better. I want to use different examples. I will borrow some of the examples that Marty and Flore-Anne mentioned. And also, I want to develop better topics like risk and risk management, insuring and investing that are so important for women and that women find so difficult. But third, I want to do what I've been doing this year, but do it more, which is be an ambassador for financial literacy. Basically, pick up the suggestions of Flore-Anne that we make changes starting from the community, and each of us can make a difference in his or her own community. So I want to be helping out also the people around me. I have two sisters. I want to help out my mother to make financial decisions. I want to help my friends. I want to help the students and also the schools in my neighborhood so that they can implement financial literacy in the schools. If we can all be an ambassador for financial literacy, we can make a difference. And I think we can, in particular, we can make a difference for women.
Thank you, Anna. Marty, as you are in the private sector, from the perspective of the financial services sector, what do we know about effectively engaging women on personal finance?
Right. I think over the years, this has evolved. Probably 15 years ago, it started out that a lot of financial service firms had separate programs about women investing, and they culled them out as different. And I don't think that's the case any longer. I think a little bit to what Flore-Anne said, the entire community, is that we need to flip it over, and so that it's not separate for women, but it becomes a uniform communication program that targets her rather than him. And this makes sense for a couple reasons. First, if you look at the numbers, women account for the majority of US adults. Women are going to live longer. Women are going to have the financial responsibility in most households. And at TIAA, we see that approximately 60% of our clients are women. So why wouldn't we operate with this mindset, right? The reverse does not always hold true, which is why the industry focused on men, leading to creating special initiatives for women. Now, don't get me wrong. There is a place for tailored women programs. I think we talked about some of these things. I think especially earlier on with our young girls, giving them confidence in some of the basic financial terms, mathematics, as they start out in school. They're often shattered by the boys' knowledge, and the boys raise their hands faster and they're quicker to the answer. So in education, it might be good to start young girls out. But as you get along, as you grow older, we think there can be one way of talking about finances, and it doesn't need to be tailored to women. Now, there's a subset of women who will value them, but most women, they want to be treated equally. They do not want to be engaged through a filter. So what does this mean? So what will we do? Clearly, it does not mean that we're going to be dumbing down content. We're not going to be putting everything in pink and women type colors. What we need to do is approach our clients in ways that demonstrate a genuine understanding of their needs, that their lives are very complicated. They're often juggling managing a household, taking care of elder parents, taking care of children, and managing the finances. And they feel like they can't be an expert on everything. And they feel often that finances is way down on the list. And that's why they spend more time having to do that, because they haven't dedicated time earlier on. So how do we help them with that? Well, we help them by providing them with bite-sized pieces that they can digest along the way. The first step is making sure that you've got your basic rainy day fund, put aside as much money as you can for the unexpected, prepare for those risks that are going to be unmanaged. We try to build trust with our customers every step of the way, that they're little pieces of information that they can digest and they can utilize. And mainly that we have answers for them, that we're available to them, and the content that we provide them can be delivered in ways that they can digest it, whether it's an online community, whether it's going into a branch where they get information from a financial provider, or that we just can provide them trusted relationships and help them along the way, making better decisions every step of that long journey that will take you to financial success.
Thank you, Marty. A question for Flore-Anne. If you had to make a final statement, a one line about this topic, what would you say?
Thank you, Nicoletta. I think I just would like to address women and just tell them to really consider and treat finance as they would treat their best friend or best ally. A really good friend that will support their choice in life and actually broaden their horizon and give them, the best that life can offer.
Thank you very much. A question for Anna Lusardi. How do we reduce shame and guilt that many women feel when we can't answer half of the questions, or we sense that we're not equipped? Shame and guilt breed more shame and guilt. What are our responsibilities as researchers and as experts to help break down these barriers?
Yeah, thank you. This is a difficult question, and I've seen this in my classroom. First of all, I want to mention a nuance in the findings that is mentioned in the report, but is also true in many of the studies we have seen. First of all, it's not that women are not able to answer correctly the question because they answer incorrectly. In many cases, women answer with, "I do not know." So it's not just a matter of knowledge, it's also a matter of confidence. And I think this is actually a good result because, women are not afraid to say, "I do not know." And, and I think they know what they do not know. And that's why when we do financial education program, they are mostly attended by women. So that's very important. And I think it's very important to improve both the knowledge and the confidence of women. We do this research to document, in a sense, a problem. And because we want women to be aware that there is a problem, and also to make sure that they have ways to solve and address this problem. And I have followed over time the suggestion of Flore-Anne. I am very lucky to be able to speak and get the advice of Flore-Anne. But for example, I've changed my personal finance course to say at the very beginning of the course what this course is about. And first of all, I asked the student, "What do you think this course is about?" And they all tell me they think it's about investing in the stock market. And I says, "Well, part of it, yes, we are going to cover investing in the stock market, but this course is mostly a happiness project. We are talking about all of the financial decisions that you have to make so you can be financially secure, be able to achieve your dream, and be eventually happy." And this is the message I would like to tell women. There is nothing to be ashamed of, but let's address this problem. And I love these little statues that was put in front of the raging bull in Wall Street, the fearless girl. We need to be fearless.
Thank you, Anna. I think there is a question for Flore-Anne. What do you expect from the recommendation about financial literacy and education, and how can it help women in particular out of these OECD recommendations?
Yes, thank you, Nicoletta. I just mentioned briefly the recommendation. So the recommendation has been approved by all the OECD government now, and Brazil on top of that. So countries have kind of, I wouldn't say an obligation, but the gentle peer pressure to implement it. So one of the recommendation is really to develop and implement a national strategy for financial education. And what is behind that is really have the whole of government, including the Ministry of Education, Labor, Economy, Culture, thinking about financial literacy. So we do hope that countries do consider this holistic approach, which also I think will cater well, to women and girls' needs, starting early in schools, ideally, and continuing with a diversity of activities that can relate to financial literacy. And these days, of course, a lot of digital content to reach out to women and girls at the place that they prefer. And these days it's often home, unfortunately, since we are all more or less kept there. So what we do hope is more implementation of, holistic approach to financial literacy. And of course, we'll monitor that. I just like, if I may, to echo what Anna was saying. Obviously, we see a lack of confidence of women and girls when it comes to finance, but I would consider this, that can be a strength, So I would say try to build on the strength of women and girls in terms of attitude. It is true, they lack a bit of confidence, but that's good because they want to learn. And unlike, some of our, boys and men who think they know better, women and girls, they know that, okay, they may not have all the skills, and nobody has all the skills anyway. So let's build on that. And I think it's really a strength in the end.
Thank you. I think this one would be for Marty. Somebody was in the financial media for a decade. I know how powerful media is, and unfortunately, mass media is not covering this topic enough. They speak to spending and shopping deals and not the wealth side of the equation. Have you seen changes with the media? Any advice?
Yeah, the media is slowly changing. I think it's hard to go up against the big media. I think you can be more targeted with your messages through digital targeting to different audiences, and have maybe better impact. You're starting to see some companies changing their approach to women and how they advertise to women, and they don't have to be beautiful any longer or things like that. So the hope would be that you start to see the same thing from financial services firms about how they talk to women about investing, and that we can start to change that and start to give them the confidence. I could just speak of my own self here. I'm an English major, and I never thought in a million years I would be in financial services. But what I was able to do is use my skills about teaching people about how to break down complex topics into bite-sized chunks to get them to learn things. And I think that is still a lot of this journey. It can be overwhelming when people say all this stuff, and it's easy to say, I don't want anything to do with this. It's too hard. And so breaking things down into bite-sized chunks that people can grab on piece by piece. And again, I keep saying it is a journey. It's like it's like health is a journey. You're not instantly healthy. You have to exercise, you have to eat well, you have to do that. Be disciplined a long time so that you're healthy. The same thing's true with finances. And I agree 100% that starting at an early age with girls and giving them the confidence that they need, I think that is a big missing ingredient with a lot of women, is that they don't have that confidence. And I think if you have financial knowledge, you'll be able to have freedom with your life and anything you want to do. And I think that is so empowering to so many young women today.
Thanks. Anna, a big question. Are you optimistic about America teaching financial literacy to kids?
Well, I am optimistic because over time we have seen that more and more states are, for example, mandated personal finance in school. We are now at 21 states, which is a number much bigger than, a few years ago. So there are signs that we are moving in that direction. I also think that the crisis is a teachable moment. Mm-hmm. And as the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008 has been a big impulse, it's been a big push for financial literacy, not just among the young and in school, but overall. I think that this is another time in which we do witness the importance of being financially literate, the cost of financial ignorance, and therefore I hope there is that push ahead. I also want to mention that as a researcher, I've also assessed the effectiveness of financial education. So I know there is a skepticism about whether or not financial education is effective. And having done a study across 33 countries, including developing ones, and looking at the most rigorous evaluation, we found that financial literacy is effective across all age group, across all countries, and across many programs. So yes, I am optimistic.
Thank you, Anna. There is a question on PISA. Maybe Flore-Anne, you can be the person addressing it. So PISA research has shown a strong relationship between math prowess and financial literacy. For a number of years now, girls have been strongly encouraged to take STEM classes and later to major in the STEM field in college. So in your view, why are women still lagging so far behind financial literacy?
So first, let me nuance. It's not lagging so far behind. It's a bit behind, especially our girls. So let me specific. I think, as I said, well, financial literacy is not only about numeracy, and actually there is a gender gap in numeracy in PISA, but is also about, understanding finance, getting to the bank, being digitally savvy. So there are a number of, other areas that women need to get into. And what we see in PISA in the latest iteration, we had some other questions about understanding financial terms and things that were more qualitative. And we saw here some interesting gender difference that can explain beyond numeracy why we see a difference in the level of financial literacy of boys and girls. So I would say it is about numeracy a bit. It is a bit also how finance is taught. I think finance is taught in a way that is not very palatable to girls, at least for now, and so that there is something that needs to be made here. And perhaps also I have to say, the way we are designing questionnaire may also have some gender bias, although we are trying our best to make sure it's not the case. We're still asking about financial terms, whereas personal finance is not only about that. So it may be also the reality that we are not capturing the whole reality and the whole context of women.
Thank you very much. We are getting close to the end of the webinar. I still see a lot of questions coming in. That is really great. You're really engaged, but unfortunately we're running now out of time. Let me thank all the panelists for their contribution today, really very important. To learn more about the report that we discussed during this webinar, you can go to the GFLEC website where the report will be posted. And we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar, which will be scheduled for December. Stay safe and stay well.